Husband spat on his black wife at family dinner, unaware she owns 90% of their company. The dinner table was a battlefield. Worthless and shameful, a ridiculous joke. How could I ever marry someone like you? The words cut through the room like a knife. Then, as if to punctuate his cruelty, he spat. Right at my face. I froze. The laughter, the polite murmurs, the clinking of glasses. It all stopped. For a moment, the world held its breath. And in that frozen moment, I felt something settle deep inside me. A quiet storm waiting to break. My name is Selena Carter, and they thought I was powerless. They thought I would bend, cry, flee, or beg. They didn't know that beneath my calm, beneath my measured words and steady hands, there was a fire they could not extinguish. The Harrington estate glittered like a monument to privilege. Crystal chandeliers exploded with light over polished marble floors. The mahogany dining table stretched across the center of the room, laid meticulously with the finest china and silver. Everyone important was there. Business partners, relatives, family friends, every one of them white, every one of them aware of my supposed place. I sat at the far end of the table. My dress was soft blue, understated, almost invisible in a sea of sequins and diamonds. I did not need to be flashy. I had learned that quiet observation was more powerful than attention. But Richard Harrington, my husband, did not see me. He never did. Selena, he said suddenly, his voice cutting like ice. Are you going to sit there in silence again? Eyes turned toward me. Some people smiled awkwardly. Some averted their gaze. My fingers rested lightly on my wine glass. I thought your words were enough, Richard, I said softly. My voice was quiet, but calm, controlled. He laughed. That cruel, hollow laugh that had become a soundtrack to my life since our marriage. Of course, always a quiet one. Useless at home, useless in conversation. Tell me, Selena, what exactly do you bring to this family, besides existing? I kept my gaze on him, unblinking. Loyalty, respect. Loyalty? Respect. He sneered, as though the words were vomit on his tongue. Don't make me laugh. No one here respects you. You're a ghost in my house. A burden I made the mistake of marrying. Then, before anyone could intervene, he spat again, across the table. The droplets hit my dress. Silence fell, suffocating, absolute. I did not cry. I did not scream. I simply sat, hand steady in my lap, face composed. The humiliation burned, yes, but tears were not for him. Clara Ellis, a friend who had always hovered nearby, pressed a napkin into my hand under the table. Don't listen to him, she whispered. Her brown eyes held warmth. And, unknowingly, curiosity that would later twist into something darker. I nodded once. Better to save your pity for them, I murmured. The guests eventually left, whispers trailing behind them. Richard strutted through the halls, triumphant, his laughter echoing in the grand corridors. Margaret Harrington, his mother, followed close behind, satisfied with the display of dominance. Daniel, his younger brother, smirked, amused by my silence. And I stayed behind. I returned to my sanctuary, my private study at the end of the estate. Unlike the rest of the house, it was warm, modest, functional. Shelves of books, a single lamp glowing, a desk that felt more like a refuge than a command post. Here I could breathe. My hands rested on the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside lay the truth, the evidence of the quiet power I had nurtured for years. Shareholder certificates, contracts, signed agreements, all of them proving that I was the true majority owner of Harrington Enterprises. 90% of the company belonged to me, though not a soul in the Harrington family knew it. Years ago, when Richard's empire teetered on the edge of ruin, it was my hidden fortune that had kept it alive. He thought his brilliance alone had saved Harrington Enterprises. He never knew the truth, and he never would, unless I decided it was time. Richard's arrogance was the perfect weapon against him. That night, Claire, always hovering, always watching, left my room, unaware she had brushed past the very evidence that could destroy him. She believed him invincible. I let her think that. For now, at the next gala, Richard paraded Vanessa, his golden-haired secretary, as if she were the crown jewel of the Harrington family. Margaret clinked her glass in approval. Daniel whispered schemes into Richard's ear, plotting expansion, dominance, influence. And there I sat, quiet, understated, observing. Every careless word, every boast, every flaunt of power cataloged in my mind. The following morning, the boardroom of Harrington Enterprises gleamed in the dawn. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the city skyline. The table was long and imposing. Richard stood at the head, puffed with confidence. Vanessa at his side, Margaret beaming with pride. Daniel leaning casually against his chair, smirking as if he and Richard shared secrets the world could never comprehend. And I sat quietly at the far end, my presence almost invisible. But I was not invisible. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard began, his voice booming, "we are expanding globally. Europe, Asia, markets we've never touched before. Harrington Enterprises will dominate." Applause erupted. Margaret's chest swelled with pride. Vanessa clapped as though every word were poetry. Daniel nodded approvingly. But I sat still, quiet, observant. Richard noticed me. He always did. But he never understood what he saw. "Selena," he called, loud enough to embarrass me in front of the room. "Do you approve, or will you remain silent as always?" I rose slowly, every movement deliberate, every motion controlled. I slid a folder toward the center of the table. The room fell silent. "You speak of vision," I said, voice steady. "But you forget one crucial fact. I own Harrington Enterprises. 90% of it. Every decision, every expansion, every contract you claim credit for, it is mine. I saved this company from collapse. I kept it alive while you took the credit." Murmurs spread like wildfire. Directors leaned forward, eyes wide. Papers were examined, signatures verified. Each moment drove Richard closer to disbelief, then panic. Margaret's pride faltered. Daniel's smirk vanished, replaced with calculation. Even Claire, who had betrayed me unknowingly, froze in shock. I turned slowly to Richard. "Effective immediately, you are removed as CEO. Your arrogance, your recklessness, your cruelty, they end here. Harrington Enterprises will be led with integrity, with vision, and with respect, not ego." He stammered, reaching out to me. "Selena, wait. We can fix this." "No." I interrupted, my voice cold, precise. "You spat on me in front of the world. Today, I return your gift, not with anger, not with revenge, but with truth. And truth doesn't forgive." Richard sank into his chair, defeated. Vanessa slipped away silently, unwilling to bear the collapse. Margaret sat frozen, stripped of authority. Daniel stared, furious but impotent. Claire, realizing her betrayal was meaningless, slumped in her seat, broken and irrelevant. I gathered my folders, sliding them into my bag. The room remained silent, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I left the boardroom, my steps deliberate, my back straight, my dignity intact. I was not just avenged. I was reborn. That night, back in my study, I finally allowed myself a small exhale. The empire they thought they built, the power they believed was theirs, it was mine, and I had shown them exactly what happens when arrogance meets truth. The mansion was quiet. The city skyline glittered beyond my windows. And somewhere deep inside me, a fire burned brighter than humiliation, betrayal, or fear. True power is quiet. True strength is hidden. And betrayal always destroys a betrayer.